And good afternoon, Santa Clarita, and welcome to the Providence Holy Cross Health Hour. I'm Tom Burton, your Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Director for the Southern California region, Orthopedic Program Manager at Providence Holy Cross. What a day today. Anyone coming up the 5 North, if you happen to be listening on on the KHTS app or on 98.1 or 1220 a.m., you're wondering why in the world you're at a dead stop because the truck route's closed. So coming up from the hospital, I was actually concerned that we were going to be a little bit late. Thankfully, everything opened up and it was great. Happy holidays and merry everything to everyone listening. We appreciate you joining us every third Wednesday. As we delve into Holy Cross and actually delve into our new providers, new physicians, and who we're going to meet one very, very shortly. Really excited about this too because it really stems onto a program that was originally discussed almost about a year ago with Dr. Merchandani, and we're so excited because we're getting going here. But let's just kind of talk a little bit about Holy Cross because, in Santa Clarita, Holy Cross, though it's a name that, in Providence, is a name that continues to show up on every street corner, it seems like. And part of the reason of that is that 30+% of our patients are actually coming from the Santa Clarita Valley. 30% of our employees live in the Santa Clarita Valley. And Santa Clarita really is just about a 10-minute drive when there's no traffic to be able to get down to Holy Cross. And so we are truly Santa Clarita adjacent and very, very pleased to know that we've been able to grow our hospital, which started as an extremely small community hospital, to a 355-bed level 2 trauma center that is servicing not only the San Fernando Valley, but also parts of the San Gabriel Valley, Santa Clarita Valley, all the way out into the Antelope Valley. So we can't be any more excited to be able to come out to Santa Clarita every month to I guess brag, and I think deservedly so. As you remember, a few months ago we had our CEO, Dr. Bernie Klein, on, and he was just kind of going over all of the things with Holy Cross that's been going on. As a magnet program for nursing, not only are we a designated magnet site, but we've been reaccredited 3 different times, where most hospitals have a problem doing it for the first time. Level 2 trauma center servicing pretty much the San Fernando Valley into Santa Clarita, which we gladly continue to do. We can't be any more excited of the fact that we have a wonderful relationship with City of Hope. So where patients would normally have to go out to Duarte to be able to get that City of Hope, high level of care, City of Hope is now bringing it to the patients. And, interestingly enough, part of our mission is to ease our patients' way. And that also goes for easing our families' way, because now care that would normally have to occur an hour to 2-hour drive away can actually be done at the hospital, which means families have the ability to stay closer to their families, which, that is a very big deal. And every physician pretty much that we talk to during our show has said the same thing. One of the most important people we treat is the family, besides the patient, so that they gain a better understanding. So the cannot be any more excited with that relationship. Our relationship with Children's Hospital LA, where they are actually staffing our NICU 24 hours a day, which does not occur anywhere else in the valley. So you don't have to call a physician to come in and take a look at your child while they're with us in the NICU. That physician's already there, and that is going to make parents rest easier to know that their children are getting the best care and the most timely care. Of course, we are still working on trying to expand our NICU. We need about 6 more beds, is our understanding. We are running into a problem every once in a while where our NICU is full, and all of a sudden our parents are now at a different hospital than their baby, and we want to be able to keep baby and mom and family together. And so we are still fundraising for that to a point where I know that the employees, we call them mission makers at the hospital, where they're actually doing payroll deductions. I believe 25 to 30% of all employees are doing payroll deductions to fund all of our foundation work, which is included with the NICU. So more to come on that. Once we've raised the funds, we'll be able to start thinking about breaking ground. So just a ton of different things going on. And one of the things too, and I think it will tie in very nicely into our guest today, is we're part of an enormous health system. When Providence Health System joined with St. Joseph's Health System to form Providence St. Joseph's Health System, we expanded into something that is literally, and I have to break the numbers back out, 51 hospitals large, 114,000 caregivers. That means everyone who's touching people's lives, where's 114,000 of them, 24,000 MDs, 38,000 nurses. It is huge. And when you have something to that enormity, that brings in the ability to have an astounding amount of data that we can actually start generating trends. We can start generating care pathways. And not only is it going to be helpful for Providence, but because we really kind of take over the entire West Coast, we might be making national decisions that's going to affect healthcare throughout the United States. And so in that sense, that is so hugely important, as is research. Being able to take that anecdotal and put a decent study behind it to make sure that what you saw actually occurred, and give the reasons why, to a point where all of a sudden now it becomes part of our treatment and part of our care pathway, if you will, to a point where it's so important to Providence that they're actually going to be flying a bunch of us up to Seattle, where our home base is, to put together a fragility fracture pathway. So that way, a patient who comes into the ER will not only have less pain due to interventions that we can do during their ER stay, but be able to get to the operating room within 24 hours or less to minimize any issues that can occur with blood loss or any other comorbidities, that we can get patients better faster and back up on their feet faster. And, I think as far as it goes, being able to get people back up on their feet faster, as I look for one extra piece here, I've lost that, but I want to bring in, oh, that's the one. Thank you so much. Because the title, honestly, this business card has to be like on a 5x6 card. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Ambooj Tiwari, okay, and the latest title, okay, which I think is great because, like with Providence, just write everything in pencil because we know it's changing, is a neurointerventional surgeon and associate with Pacific Neuroscience Institute, Providence Hospitals and Healthcare Services, Southern California, and overall stud. The stud part I just added. So, Dr. Tiwari, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
And you're right. That's the title's become a bit mouthful, and I tried to be brief here. So you're right. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. But more importantly is, in the title, and this was one of the pieces that we we were talking before we came into the studio, was there's a lot of different specialties really in what you do that we normally would see as an individual specialty. And so, when you combine all of these specialties to come up with a title that is like this, tell me about your education. How did you get to your education? What drove you to do this?
So we could start from conception, but I'll probably move a little forward. As with many physicians and many caregivers, it was obviously a personal tragedy when I was at a fairly young age. I was in my teens, which kind of got me attracted to the world of neuroscience. And and there's a lot of people which will tell you this is what happens, whether it's a small stroke, a big brain injury, where the personality completely changes, and it's very shocking when you're that young to see someone's personality completely turn into something else. And that sort of drove me towards trying to, as a kid, I put it, figuring out the brain. Obviously, I didn't figure out the entire brain, but I am trying to work on a part of it now. But that drove me into training in neuroscience and doing research and biostatistics and stuff like that. And eventually I went into a neurology residency. Obviously, I was thinking more of behavioral and other stuff back then, but I got really attracted to the world of neurointerventional, which at that time was just a fledgling field. They had just done some really early work, and it wasn't a well-established field. And then they kind of moved in into bigger things, and that's how I kind of got attached to it. I was interested in stroke and having a surgery which is so dramatic that you could literally walk in with no ability to talk and no ability to move your body, and the next day walk out of the hospital. And that was there was so much gratitude in this field that I got involved. And most of medicine is a silo. It's like people are siloed up, but this is probably one of the fields where you actually have like 3 or 4 different kinds of physicians who train in this field. They come from neurosurgery, neuroradiology, neurology like me, and they kind of collaborate together to like help people with this devastating disease. And that's why I think it's a great field and has such good representation from different fields.
I appreciate the fact that you actually brought that up too. Is the word silo comes up in a variety of different ways on the management side as well as in the practice side. Is that what we found is that there seems to be so much subspecialty that you don't have a lot of that bleed over into a variety of different fields where you're actually the opposite direction. You're kind of a mutt, if you will. You're a mix of a lot of different things that allows you to be able to do what you do. As far as being personally driven, I think everybody who's listening will understand that dedication to one's work has to be personal. There has to be a passion behind it, and it's refreshing to be able to hear that. And but you did a lot of your stuff. You mentioned when we were driving up that from about the age of 14 or so, that your direction became more poignant, and where you grew up, and then when you came over to the States for your medical school. Tell us about that process, and how did you determine where and the whats and the such? Because I know people are always interested in hearing that.
Yeah. So when I started off, I was 14. On this journey, and a lot of people think that was a bit of a psychopathic approach back in the day because 14-year-olds are not that determined in their life, or they don't know a direction that well. But that's the nature of personal tragedies. So I sort of I was always a good student, as most of us have to be to get into a field like this. But I sort of started working more and more towards like a medical education and a scientific education. I went on to do medical school where I was specifically focused on neuroscience, did a lot of research back in med school, came to the States, did my advanced degree in biostatistics and epidemiology, where I worked on, interestingly, medication errors and advanced issues in outpatient care. And then as I further went into neurology, I started focusing more on stroke-related work. And much of the stroke work was back in the day, because there was not any of this kind of treatment that we have now, was really rehabilitation and sort of helping people out while there wasn't a lot of hope for them, and we were just losing a lot of people. Back in the day when I was training, stroke was the 3rd biggest killer in the United States after cardiology and cancer. Now it's the 5th biggest, so we have definitely made a big dent in it. And fortunately, my story was part of the stroke story, and I've been very happy about that.
That's fantastic. and having been doing what I do, as a physical therapist, back in the late 80s, the stroke care was trying to see how we would progress somebody's function, over a 1 month, 2 month, 6 month period of time, to see what could return. And with the advancements that in looking at your research and such, your amazing list of research actually, and which explains an awful lot with the epidemiologic study and biostats, all of a sudden you can start to realize that the advancements are becoming so great that what we are seeing is that patients are now, not only are we just allowing them to work with what they have, but we actually have the ability to get them to a place closer to where they were pre insult.
Right, and talking about getting to a place closer to pre-insult, I would sort of really pick on that word because it not only talks about the ability for you to return to function completely, but it also brings in a very important point, which is time to getting that treatment. And time to getting treatment is very important because the farther out you go away from the time that you had the initial symptoms or initial stroke, most people have it in their sleep. Actually, the common accepted time of most strokes, 60%, is 3 a.m. So most people actually discover around 5:30, 6, 7:30. And then they go through this very difficult process of figuring out where to take these cases, and you lose a lot of time. And with every minute, you lose 2 million neurons. So if you think about it, you have 100 million neurons. You don't have that much to lose. So the place, if you want to get back to the place where you started or where you were, then you have to get to a place which is closer to you. And this is one of the reasons we're starting out the Holy Cross program. Because if you think about it, there are 2 million people in this area between those three valleys, if not more. I trained in a hyper-dense urban environment, which was New York City, and we were serving the borough of Brooklyn, which was 2.5 million. And you had 5 centers there. Here, you don't even have 2.
Right.
So obviously, you have to kind of understand that we have this sort of mission, almost a God-given mission, to try to get care to people quickly, and they need to come to us quickly, and we need to get to them quickly. So.
Correct. And I think probably, to the point that, like with anything, heart attacks, things, the quicker you get to care, the better the chance of survival and what the quality of that survival is going to be. Part of it is recognition, right? And
right.
So maybe just briefly, can you go over some of the common signs that we might find in a person who might be having a stroke?
So there's a lot of educational work which has been done on this, and I'm glad you kind of brought this up because the reality is that there's a very good acronym called BFAST, and you can just type it up. It's all capital BFAST, and that's what we use for stroke, where if these 6 things are affected, which includes balance, eye movements, facial droop. So if your face is being deviated to one side, if you have difficulty with sensations, or if you have difficulty with motor movement, you need to go to a stroke center quickly. And it's not only important to go to a stroke center, you have to go to a stroke center where these kind of services are offered, where people can do stroke surgery, so I'm a stroke surgeon, and you have to go to those centers first rather than just get TPA, because if you have a big clot, TPA only works 10% of the times, and it's very important to know that. So not only do you have to know the symptoms, but you also should know the places which can offer this kind of surgery. Most of the people call it stroke intervention or stroke surgery, and you have to key on to those locations, and you have to, if possible, tell your EMS that you need to go to a place which offers that.
That's extremely interesting, and I think just to throw an analogy, if you will, is that we run into a problem where if I think about it like my lawn, right? So I have my main that has all the pipes going out to all the different areas of the sprinklers that end up working, and in the case of what we're going to be discussing is what happens if I have a huge rock that blocks the pipe right at the main? So everything downstream from that is no longer having water go to that. And very quickly, we're going to start seeing grass die. And so in my analogy, we're talking days, depending on the time of the year, it might be even weeks, especially when it's really cold. However, with the brain, we're talking seconds.
Yes.
And this is quite significant. So when we come back from our first commercial break, we're going to kind of delve into the concept of what our options are. And so you're joining us here on the Providence Holy Cross Health Hour on KHTS, 1220 AM, 98.1 FM. Find us also on the app. We'll be right back.
Mission Valley Bank puts the community in community banking. They strive to be your most trusted bank. Mission Valley Bank is happy to sponsor KHTS Holiday Music. Happy holidays!
Helping Our Children Santa Clarita is excited to announce the first ever Christmas toy giveaway in Whoville, Saturday, December 22nd at Elevate Church in downtown Newhall, 24346 Main Street from 4 to 7 p.m. Take your free photo with the Grinch in his sleigh with our own KHTS 98.1 FM and AM 1220 providing the holiday music mix. Bring a child in need and join with our sponsors, the CHP, KHTS, Elevate Church, Light of Hope, Escape Theater, and the Boys and Girls Club SCV.
Hi, I'm Miles McNamara, Certified Senior Advisor and owner of Comfort Keepers and Home Care. Our caregivers help you in your own home. A Comfort Keeper can provide companionship, meal preparation, medication monitoring, assistance with personal care, transportation to doctor appointments, all enhancing your independence and safety in the comfort and privacy of your own home. So if you or someone you love could use a helping hand at home, call Comfort Keepers at 287-4200. That's 287-4200.
Healthcare can be difficult if you're underinsured or have Medi-Cal. Samuel Dixon Family Health Center can help. Services are available on a sliding fee schedule. The mission of the Samuel Dixon Family Health Center is to give the Santa Clarita Valley access to affordable, quality primary care. There are 3 locations to serve you: Canyon Country, Newhall, and Valverde. Go to sdfhc.org for more information and to find the location most convenient for you.
We know sometimes people lose their way. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, The Way Out Recovery may have the answers you've been waiting for. The Way Out is the premier intensive outpatient treatment center treating Santa Clarita. Asking for help is the first step. Please call The Way Out today, 661-296-4444, and ask for Bob or Melissa for a free assessment. The Way Out is an accredited, affordable outpatient program, and they accept most insurance. They can improve your life. Call The Way Out, 661-296-4444. That's 296-4444. Or check them out online at thewayoutrrecoveryscv.com. You can make the change. Ask The Way Out for help.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
Give me the news. I've got a bad case of loving you. No pills gonna cure my...
And welcome back. You're joining us here on the Providence Holy Cross Health Hour on KHTS, your holiday station. Is that right still? We're still cruising the holiday music as we get the nod from Shane. You're joining us on 1220 AM, 98.1 FM, and also on the app, unless for those of you over on Facebook, you're kind of catching us there. Hi, how are you? And thank you again for joining us every third Wednesday of the month. And, we're just very gracious. Dr. Tiwari had the opportunity to take a little bit of time away from his extremely busy schedule to come in and talk about, life as a stroke surgeon, And so we basically went to break with the concept of how a clot blocks blood flow going downstream, and so it's those tissues that normally are supplied by those vessels that are blocked. Those are the tissues that are going to be problematic, and that tissue loss and the tissue death is quick.
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought this up because what a lot of people have understood about the brain. So the brain, unlike our belly, which often can deposit a lot of fat, has no ability to have any reserves. And even if you have a lot of fat, you don't have enough reserves for your brain. So your brain is dependent on continuous blood supply. And when you look at it, even though it is only 2 to 3 pounds, 3 to 4 pounds, it actually uses up about 25% of the energy of the body. So the brain is literally dependent on having your blood flow all the time. Now, I like the analogy of plumbing, and the way to think about it is that the brain is the first thing which is fed by your heart. So, which probably helps because if you need 25% of the blood, it should probably be the first destination where the blood is going. And because the brain gets direct supply from the heart, if you end up forming a booger or a clot, the first place it would go would be the brain. And once the brain, if the clot is big, as it happens in a lot of heart conditions, it blocks one of the pipes which are bigger, and that means there's a huge area which doesn't get blood. So I like the analogy of the river. So if you block the mouth of the river as opposed to a further tributary downstream, the patch of land which will get dry is much less, but if you block it at the mouth, it's much bigger. What happens in the brain is it's really about seconds and minutes, and you start losing 2 million neurons per minute. And that may not mean a lot, but the way I would think about it is that every time you lose 1 hour, you lose 3.5 years of your age. So if you have delayed care by 3 hours, you've practically lost 10 years of your brain life. So if you were 40, you would be 50 if you've delayed it by 3 hours, and that's a very sobering statistic if you think about it. Yeah.
The and so that's the next piece of it, because now we're going to be talking about clots, on how they can disrupt things, but they can also be due to vessel failure and bleeding. And so we're not going to really talk about the bleeding as much, I don't believe, or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think what we should talk about both, because they are sort of two sides of the coin. But I think that what happens more often is the clot part, so I'm more than happy to talk about that more.
Well, that's fantastic. And then in my line of work on the orthopedic side, one of the things that we find quite frequently is, or we hear about quite frequently, is any lower extremity surgeries. There's usually vessel trauma. There's a lot of inactivity. The chances of someone actually forming a clot becomes a little bit more common if they're not put on the right prophylaxis.
Right.
And now all of a sudden that clot frees up when they are being functional, and then it shoots all the way through the body, up through the heart, and boom, right up to the brain.
Exactly.
And now they're coming to you. Okay, so let's kind of step us through. So there's recognition that there's a problem, and they activate EMS, which is the right thing to do, right?
Right. You should not be driving into a hospital. You should always call EMS, because it's always the faster you call the EMS, the easier it is for me to know that you're coming, because EMS lets us know from the field that you're heading over. Also, all our systems are created in such a way, because we're based like trauma and STEMI, to sort of pick you up, pick your symptoms up on the field, so that the team's waiting for you when you arrive into the hospital, and they don't get activated once you get to the hospital. So, the analogy I give is Formula 1 racing, or Formula 4 racing, where you are the car and we have to come to you. You don't have to come to us, so that we can get all the processes moving fast. So let's say you call EMS, the ideal thing to do. Then we get notified 5 to 10 minutes prior to your arrival to our hospital. The emergency room team, the stroke team, and the endovascular team, which is what I'm the head of, will get to know about it. And once you get to us, you get to the CAT scan within 10 to 15 minutes. We pick up whether you have a clot kind of a problem or a bleeding kind of problem. If you have a clot kind of problem, if you are within the first 4.5 hours, we'll give you the clot busting medication, which also we're doing phenomenal at. We're at about 90% of what's expected. And most people are at 75%. But once you get the blood clotting medication, we take a look at the brain map of your arteries, and if we find one of the arteries are blocked, then we take you to like an interventional suite where it's like a cath lab, but a cath lab for the brain. The brain is a bit more complex, of course, and we go into it, and we have it's like a ticking time bomb. We have to go in and try to grab the clot, and most recent studies have shown that we can successfully do it in 30 to 60 minutes in 90% of the cases. I mean, the fastest I've done is 12 minutes, but you can.
But who's bragging?
Yeah. But who's bragging? Except for I'm bragging.
You should be bragging. I mean,
Yes.
It's absolutely astounding. And so we'll take a step back, and so that patient will come in, will get immediate views to see whether or not there's a bleed involved, and if there's not a bleed involved, sometimes you can actually recognize that there's maybe a clot involved based off the symptoms and such, and that within a short period of time that they can actually put in a medication that will actually quickly dissolve clots. Now, is that right?
Right. So with stroke, what we're doing is pretty much what people used to do with the heart, where you have to give this medication within 45 minutes, 90% of the times. The faster you give this medication, the better the outcome is. And once you give the medication, about 25% of the cases, you might not even need the surgery. And it has really good data behind it, where almost 33% of people have some good recovery. If you do have a big clot, the medication may not work, and it's a little bit like the difference between cleaning a pipe, where sometimes Drano won't work.
Right.
So you have to become the plumber and go in and pull the clot out, and that's where I get involved.
Now that's so once we actually once you make the determination, you've started the medication. Let's just say if the timing sits up right, and then you do new imaging of some form or mapping. I think you mentioned arterial mapping, and you can actually see how the vascular system is looking actually in the brain. And I ask everybody who's listening, go onto Yahoo, go to Google, and just type in arterial mapping of the brain and look at what the images that come up. It's astounding.
Yes.
Absolutely astounding. And then you're going to be able to see exactly where you need to go.
Right.
If you need to go.
Yes. Most of the times what happens is that we see which is the artery which is blocked, especially if you're having a big stroke. And then based on that arterial map, it's sort of like your Google map of your brain, but it's a static map, and we take you up into the what's called the interventional suite or the OR, where we get more dynamic maps where we can actually see what the clot is doing and how the arteries are behaving, and then using that dynamic map we go get into that clot and then try to get the clot out.
Right, and I think it's important too, because you'd mentioned that sometimes the clot, sometimes it may dissolve, but it doesn't completely go away, and so you can actually free up enough space where you can get some blood to go through.
Right.
However, the likelihood, just if that clot were to remain there, my assumption is that will create enough turbulence that will allow for that clot to reform, and that you will end up with a blockage again or further down the line.
Right, and like any blockage anywhere in the body behaves the same way. If you have a clot which has dissolved a little bit but not completely stopped, you can form the clot again. But more importantly, you're basically starving the rest of the brain, because the entire brain, your brain does not work on 70% capacity. It wants 100% capacity. So even if the clot is only 20% left, your brain is still working on lower capacity. Right. So you would still feel the symptoms, even though it may not die, you would still feel the symptoms. So we still have work to do, because you will not be able to completely recover.
So we've got to go in and go get it. Now, which is so hugely intriguing, because it's astonishing to me to be able to see how you're able to maneuver instrumentation. We see it arthroscopically, which is, that's nice open space and the such. And we had Dr. Nanjiana on about a year and a half or so ago, where he was talking about how they were using an endoscope to be able to go in and get some of those basilar tumors.
Right, skull base.
And that normally you couldn't get to, and they're able to weave through the inundations that they can actually get to it, which is so amazing. And so you basically have to do the same thing. You have to be able to go in arterially, I'm assuming.
Right.
Now, what's your approach?
So most neurointerventionalists like me used to take the groin approach, where we would go from the groin and take the catheters up into the brain. The key difference between endoscopic surgery, like you already mentioned, is you do have a lot of space. But in similar situations like vascular and even cardiac, you have arteries which are, so to speak, much more forgiving. So you have arteries which are about 4 to 5 millimeters.
Right.
The brain arteries that we work with are about 2 to 3 millimeters. And they're not fun arteries to deal with, because they're very sensitive. You have to get into these and try to grab quickly and get out quickly. And if you try to manipulate them too much, they will either have another clotting problem, they will dissect, or you can even have bleeding in the brain, which is why people like me have to train for years and years. Some neurosurgeons used to joke about how we put them to shame in terms of how much training we have to do. But you need people who need to be trained very well for this, so that they can deal with arteries which are not very nice.
Right. So you have an interesting situation, is that you have to get what needs to be done in a very reasonable, efficient amount of time. However, you can't be a bull in the china shop. You have to really take a very, very agile, very methodical approach in directing. Now, and that's, I think probably people who are listening will appreciate, how do you direct the catheter?
So we have we have specially designed catheters which are completely used for the neurointerventional space, and the catheters which have the technology has only existed for the last 5 to 10 years, which is why you can't really use the same technology which is used for vascular stuff for the heart, because you need catheters which are really, really soft at at the point where they're coming in contact with the arteries of the brain, and a lot of things are also something that we sort of learn on the job. Many techniques. Just to give you an example, 99%, maybe 95% of neurointerventionalists use the groin. We were one of the first 5 or 7 institutions when I was at NYU which started using the radial artery to do endovascular intervention of the brain. And I think our communities, even our group here in Providence, has also done direct carotid sticks, and that's about 3 to 5% people. So you actually need people who are trained with much more diverse skills so that they can get the clot out in the best way possible. And it's not always the groin.
Right, right, and I would almost imagine that the closer you can get to where you need to be at, that also will help as far as your expediency and be able to get the job done.
Right. I mean, it's closer but safer. It's always because the risks are always very high if you go very close to the brain. There is a bit of everything in this field is high stakes, so you kind of have to understand which stake is reasonable enough in terms of risk, and which stake is something which may be too big a price to pay. And like I said, it has to be done in the hands of people who've not only done it a lot, but are also like very closely involved with the new technologies as we are.
And then the imaging. So what do you see as you're doing now? Is there a camera actually on the catheter itself, or are you doing it through imaging?
I like how Tom is able to predict the future. So the vascular and the cardiac people are really lucky because you can take a camera which is really, really stiff, and you can put it in a vessel and the vessel expands, but you can't do that in the brain, because if you try putting something stiff in the brain, the artery can dissect and you can bleed in the brain, and it could be sort of the last thing you ever did.
Right.
So we have not developed the cameras yet, but I was recently at an international conference where we were discussing some of these techniques, and there might be things like these in the future.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you get to the point where you need to be at. How do you get the clot? You know, I air quoted on the radio like that's going to help, but how do you get the clot?
So,
because I envision a pickle grabber.
It's sort of like that, but it's really I guess the best way to think about it is it's a stent on a stick. And what you do is you have these special devices called the stent retrievers, which are designed like a stent, and they were being developed for something else when somebody figured out that this could be used for stroke. But what you do is you go next to the clot and you place this. So what you have this fluoroscopic map, which is a dynamic map, which you're shooting while you're in the brain, and then you're making this arterial road map, and then you take these special catheters and wires inside the brain. You go right next to the clot, then you deploy or you open up this special stent, and you sort of engage the clot. You don't always grab it because the clot is sort of if you try to grab it, it can break. And it's important to know because sometimes the older devices we use was trying to grab and it didn't work. So what it does, it engages the clot in such a way that the clot kind of wants to interact with the stent more than it wants to interact with the vessel. And then you try to take a catheter right next to it, and you sort of have this mechanism where half of the clot is grabbed by the catheter, half of it is by the stent retriever, and you slowly pull it out, and you take it out of the system.
It's capture. You're capturing it.
We're capturing, yes.
And then the once you actually have the clot out, is there anything that you do? I mean, is there any specific pathology that you do to the clot to make a determination of the what, the why, the how that may lead into the further portion of that patient's story on how to maybe affect change going forward so that these things don't happen again? Is there anything like that?
This is interesting because this kind of problems came up like 3 years ago. So a bunch of institutions like ours got together and we decided to create what's called a clot science workshop, where we would send these clots to pathology to and also to companies which are developing these devices to see what is the best way to grab these clots, because it doesn't matter whether the clot is even if the clot is coming from the heart, it still might be different kind of clots. And sometimes you have to have a technology which fixes one kind of clot, and sometimes the technology fixes the other kind of clot. And that's why we have this whole thing where every major meeting we have a clot science workshop where we talk about what we learned from the clots of the last year.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you often hear about the physicians going off to these seminars or to these international society type places, and I can tell you, family have always said, well, that's just a big boondoggle, but there's actually pretty strong work being taken care of, which is great.
Yes, and this is just the beginning. I mean, we've just started saving about 33 to 50% of people who are having these strokes, but a lot of them we're not being able to solve because they're coming to us later than they have to. In fact, we've only broken through 7% of the market, of the population.
Oh, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So you're listening to Dr. Tiwari, and this is such a great conversation and timely as we've started up with the new program over at Providence Holy Cross. You're coming to us on KHTS, 1220 AM, 98.1 FM, and we will be back after the break so we can find out how to actually get to you and any wrap-up. We'll be right back.
Olive Terrace Bar and Grill is the hottest new Mediterranean fusion restaurant in Santa Clarita with unique delicacies like seafood right off the boat, mouth-watering prime steaks, artesian sandwiches, delicious pastas, and tasty kebabs. Unwind on their cozy outdoor patio at their weekend champagne brunch, full menu, and weekly specials at oliveterracebarandgrill.com. Check out their full bar and happy hour daily specials in Valencia on Copper Hill and Newhall Ranch Road by LA Fitness. Olive Terrace Bar and Grill, delicious food seasoned with love.
Why do people from all over Santa Clarita come to our spa in Canyon Country? Simple. They want the highest quality services at prices that everyone can afford. This is Rosemary from Beyond Harmony Med Spa. Read our reviews and know why we won the Ultimate Beauty Awards 2 years in a row by the readers of Elite magazine. Come and see how close we really are and experience the level of excellence that our clients have loved for the past 13 years. Go to beyondharmony.com or call 298-8008 today for a free consultation.
Indulge yourself in a world of wine at the 7th Annual Sierra Pelona Valley AVA Wine Festival, Saturday, April 6th from noon to 4 p.m., benefiting the Zonta Club of SEV. Get your Chardonnay on with live music, gourmet food, handmade crafts, and the best local wines, beers, spirits, and ciders Santa Clarita has to offer at Reyes Winery. Dionysus dilettantes and wine connoisseurs alike will enjoy this festival. Sponsored by Reyes Winery, Pepsi, Anheuser-Busch, California Bank and Trust, and Mercedes-Benz of Valencia. Visit reyeswinery.com to purchase tickets. Must be 21 or over.
Men, are you feeling tired, stressed, or just don't have the energy you used to? Did you know this could be related to decreased testosterone levels? Luckily, there's a safe, effective solution. Weeder Prime helps support healthy testosterone levels with clinically tested key ingredients. Just 2 capsules of Weeder Prime each day can help change your mood, energy, focus, body fat, and lean muscle. Feel the way you felt 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Rediscover your Prime with Weeder Prime. To find a retailer near you, visit WeederPrime.com. That's WEIDER Prime.com.
Hey there, it's Tori with your hometown station weather. Gorgeous day today. Sunny skies and a high of 76. Clear tonight with a low of 49. Warmer tomorrow with highs close to 80 degrees. Helping Our Children, Santa Clarita is excited to announce the first ever Christmas toy giveaway in Whoville, Saturday, December 22nd at Elevate Church in downtown Newhall from 4 to 7 p.m. For more information, go to hometownstation.com.
Your hometown station.
Doctor, give me the news. I've got a bad case of loving you.
Welcome back, Santa Clarita. You're joining us here on the Providence Holy Cross Health Hour, wrapping up as we move closer to the 1 o'clock hour. Here at the KHTS studios in Newhall. Beautiful Newhall. Gorgeous day today to be out and about, especially as we're leading into the Christmas week and our new year. I think we're going to be having some beautiful time to be able to enjoy the next couple of weeks coming up. You're on with us on KHTS, your holiday station, and the home for the holidays, if you will. And you're joining us with Dr. Tiwari, who in probably the last 40 minutes, learned more about what you do than we would have been able to pick up probably in a documentary or anything like that. So I truly appreciate you being here. Now, one of the questions I had before we get to how do we get our patients to to reach you, hopefully they don't need you, but we still need to be able to know. So with medications that will thin the blood, as you will, is there still a golden standard?
So if you're talking about medications in the first 4.5 hours, preemptively,
pre-clots.
So there's a lot of good research for people who have a condition called AFib, which has about 67% chance of having a stroke sometimes. Not sometimes, but 67% chance that you should be on blood thinners. There are modern blood thinners which are actually way more advanced than Coumadin. Patient didn't like Coumadin. Doctors didn't like Coumadin. I don't think even rats like Coumadin. It's a rat poison. So the reality is that we now have medications which are like very mild. They don't cause bleeding in the gut or other things. You're not that worried if you fall. And those are becoming our favorite medications. Gold standard, I would still say, is Coumadin because we have 60 years of experience. But the modern medicines are actually really good. The other medications that we typically use for arteries is aspirin, good old aspirin, baby aspirin. Most people say after 50 or 60, if you take baby aspirin, keeps cancer away, keeps strokes away, keeps heart disease away. Some cases, like carotid stenosis, you may need a second medication like Plavix or Brilinta.
Okay. So. And of course, making sure that, especially, if you're doing it prophylactically, please make sure that your physician knows that you're going to be taking, because aspirin is something that's over the counter, and there is more and more research coming out how it's helping with a variety of different things if taken almost like you would take a vitamin. However, there are concerns, and those concerns need to be addressed and overseen and supervised by your physician. So very, very important.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you're mentioning it, because the two things in this talk that we've spoken about, which is not necessarily related to what I do, but what people need to know is that medicine in general is moving away from one size fits all to personalized medicine, and your doctor or people who kind of know what works for you are the only ones who would be able to tell you if aspirin, what dose would be right for you. And for someone it's 81, for someone it's 325. So we're moving into a world where, like, your tailor or like somebody who cooks for you, your doctor would be specifically deciding what works for you.
Which is great, because everything else seems to be moving big box, and we're actually going back to that almost like concierge styled care, where that's very, very individual.
Yes.
Now, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming out to help out with us. Now, with Pacific Neuroscience Institute, and part of the Providence family, how do patients find you if they need to find you?
So while emergently 70 to 80% of my work is emergencies, you should always call 911 if you're having symptoms. And once again, it's be fast, all capital. If you're having any of those symptoms, come straight to a place like Providence, which is like 10 or 15 minutes away, and can offer the kind of surgery that I do. And then once you're there, we'll quickly pick up the problem. But if you have other problems like aneurysms or AV malformations or other like problems which can cause bleeding, and if you're really scared about those things, because somebody's telling you about how dangerous it is best to talk to an expert about those conditions. And we have the experts, and you can check on the Providence website. You can probably find a way to get in touch with me.
Okay, so no actual clinic address where patients would do follow-up with you, or however.
So the clinic thank you for asking me that. The clinic address is going to be right next to Mission Hills. Right next to Providence Holy Cross. And it's going to be 15031 Rinaldi Street. And if I will update more details, I just don't have it handy with me.
Oh, very good. And is that in the PMI suite?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're going to be going up to the third floor.
Yeah, third floor.
Third floor. I think it's 380.
Yeah.
For some reason, I think 380 is right. So it is going to be the Holy Cross Surgery Plaza, right immediately east of the hospital off of Indian Hills Road. And on the third floor, you can easily find them in Suite 380 in the Providence Medical Institute suite. And is phone number, website that they can to work with, or is it better to just contact the 888?
It's better. So you can call the same number which is available for the neurosurgery team, and I'm housed in the same unit, but you can definitely call the 888 number also.
Okay, so and that number is going to be 888 HEALING, HEALING, and if you don't have letters on your phone or however, then it's going to be 888-432 5464, and that will get you to Providence, and then you can actually ask for Dr. Tiwari, and they'll be able to get you connect you immediately with the office, or make sure that you have the correct phone number to be able to get to him. And just know that with 911, don't ask for the doctor. Just get to the hospital. So you're joining us. Thank you so much, Dr. Tiwari, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're joining us on the Providence Holy Cross Health Hour on KHTS. Merry everything to everybody who's listening. We will see you back in 2019.